The bell is ringing for the back-to-school bash at Capital Ford in Santa Fe. Don't be late to add up big factory incentives combined with final dealer subtractions on current inventory. Get back-to-school savings in a new 25 Ford F-150 STX. Buy for $699 a month plus 4.9% APR financing for 72 months. Or a new 25 Ford Bronco Sport. Lease for just $399 a month. It all adds up to a great time to buy during the back-to-school bash at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
All right, good evening, everyone. We welcome you to another episode of Huddle Up. Huddle Up is a series of segments on the Pit Press Live that features New Mexico high school football coaches and players. Huddle Up is available on all platforms on the Pit Press. You can find us at the Pit Press. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nick Nunez. Your other co-host is the voice of Western New Mexico athletics, Ed Nunez. Dad, how are you doing tonight?
Good, son. They're quite a week to come with high school football, and we've got an exciting matchup on Friday, and I wish I could be there to see it. I'm going to actually be in town, but there's so many things going on with Lobos playing and things like that. But good to be on the show with you as always, son, and looking forward to talking to our guests.
It's been a great opening first couple weeks to New Mexico high school football. We got a very special guest tonight on Huddle Up. He is a first-team All-State running back. He's helped lead the Las Cruces Bulldogs to a 3-0 record and a number 2 ranking in the latest NMOT coaches poll and in the Max Preps Freedman rankings. Through 3 games, he has 791 all-purpose yards and 13 touchdowns. Las Cruces will be at Lightning Bolt Stadium this week. They will take on the number 1 ranked Cleveland Storm. And Ryan, if you could bring on our next guest.
He's on. He's there.
We've got Las Cruces running back Danny Amaro. Danny, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, what's up, guys? Pleasure to be on. I'm doing all right.
Right on. Well, we're really glad to have you, man. We're very excited. We know this is kind of the matchup of matchups in New Mexico high school football. It's number one versus number two in Class 6A. We'll ask you some questions about that in a moment, man. But we want to talk to you first about some of the early success that you and the Las Cruces Bulldogs have had through 3 weeks. You guys are 3-0 on the season with three convincing wins: 61-6 over Mayfield in week one, 38-20 over Volcano Vista in week two, 47-22 over Rio Rancho last Thursday at the Field of Dreams. The offense has scored 20 touchdowns. Just talk to us a little bit about your team's early success. How have you guys gotten off to a 3-0 start?
Yes, sir. I mean, I give all praise to my coaches and O-line. I mean, our coaches work countless hours on getting us prepared for games and like having a game plan for us on not getting stopped. And I mean, our O-line comes in, works day in and day out, and perfects their craft, and just kind of lets us um, go out and play on game day.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And as I mentioned, you guys have scored 20 offensive touchdowns through 3 weeks. That is nearly 7 touchdowns per game. I know you're a very humble guy. You've given a lot of credit to the coaching staff, to your offensive line. But let's talk about you a little bit. Of those 20 offensive touchdowns that Las Cruces has scored, you've scored 13 of them. Last week against Rio Rancho, you're coming off a game where you had 181 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. You added 101 yards rushing and a receiving touchdown. What's been the key to your success individually running the football for Las Cruces?
I mean, just kind of staying focused on my process. I mean, there's a lot that can go into that week and trying to stay focused on what I need to do, what I need to kind of follow. And um, I mean, again, my online does a great job of giving me that space to go out and run and go out and showcase my skills.
Yeah, man, as we're looking at some highlights, it looks like this might have been looks like week 2 at the Field of Dreams where you guys took on Volcano Vista. Let's ask about this game a little bit since it's playing. This was a tight game in the second quarter. I think Volcano Vista tied it up 14-14 with about 11 minutes left in the second quarter. Then you scored a touchdown, I think, late in the second. You guys tacked on one more, and you guys kind of coasted in the second half. But your strength of schedule, man. I mean, you guys have played 2 of the top 5 teams in Class 6A. Just how do you feel about the strength of schedule and how that's prepared you for your matchup versus Cleveland on Friday?
Yes, sir, definitely. I mean, this schedule is nothing to play with. I mean, we have to come in every week and stay focused, with our process, and just kind of stay within for each other. That's a big thing we have in our locker room this year is just staying within for each other and not letting ourselves get riled up with bad calls, like some stuff like that. Just kind of moving on to the next play, and I mean, just we have a great group of guys that are all willing to do that for the team, and it makes it easy for all of us.
Last question for you, then I'll turn it over to my dad. Danny, as we look at your highlights from your Huddle tape that's posted on your X account, it just seems like Coach Mark Lopez has used you in so many different ways on offense. You'll line up right behind Gunnar Guardiola in the shotgun. You'll take the handoff. You're a pass catcher out of the backfield. You had 27 total touchdowns your junior year. Just talk about, how you've become such a versatile weapon for Las Cruces.
Yes,
Early.
sir. I think I just go out every week and kind of stay true to myself and stay with him for the team. I mean, there's nothing more than the team right now. That's what we're trying to work on, and we have a big week coming up, and just kind of having each other's back. And I mean, coming into this week, it's gonna be a very big week, so we have to just kind of learn from our mistakes this past week and move on and just have that mentality of no one can stop us.
For sure, man. Dad, I'll turn it to you.
Daniel, this is number 1 versus number 2. I talked to Coach Lopez this morning. I had him on the sports desk, and it's a lot of hype. A lot of hype for this matchup. You guys are coming down. It's been a while. Last year, a close game with Cleveland, 35-25. The Storm, they're the defending champs. But this game does not define the whole season. You've got Hobbs, Alamogordo, there's Carlsbad. You've got games left. So you can't put all your eggs in one basket, but it's a big game. You're coming down and to Rio Rancho, and you definitely want to put on your best performance. You mentioned the offensive line and the game against Cleveland. They've got great physical fronts on both sides of the ball. You saw some of that huddle tape where your guys are getting second level blocks. And they Coach Lopez and his staff do a good job of getting you in space. 143 rushing yards against Rio Rancho in the first quarter. So you were on your way to a great game. But you mentioned, I guess I want to ask you, Coach Lopez mentioned that. He also mentioned your defense today on the sports desk, which wins games. Talk a little bit about some of the schemes they use you in the Las Cruces offense. You've had a lot of success with it, and you're humble. You've got to be fired up for this game. Everybody is. But talk a little bit about the way they use you offensively.
Yes, sir, definitely. I mean, our defense gives us opportunities and lets us just kind of not make mistakes, but we know we can count on them to pick us up. So it's really a team effort. And coming into this week, we know they're a good team. Been watching a lot of film, and we know that what we're up against, they're going to be a really good team, really physical team, and I'm ready for it. Me and my guys are looking forward to Friday.
You got to, because I was telling Coach Lopez that this morning that the Field of Dreams is great atmosphere. There's no doubt about it to play down there. But coming down here to Lightning Bolt Stadium, they've got the field on the campus. When they score, you hear a cannon. And I remember covering games out there. I told Coach Lopez I would jump a little when that cannon until you got used to it. So you're coming down here. It's a very hyped up matchup. But there's a lot more football to play after that. This is not the end of the season. I got to ask you about this. Quarterback Gunnar Guardiola, one of the best in the state. And Coach Lopez said that he does his own scouting on his own. He'll take notes and 6 pages. And I told Coach Lopez this morning, I bet he's got 8 or 9 or 10 this week. But he described you as the best running back in the state. He said that. He goes, I'll say that. I have no problem saying that. He's the best running back, in the state. What did that mean to you when you heard that?
I mean, it's a great feeling to know that my coach has got my back. I mean, nothing really more to kind of do than just go out and show out every game day and just keep proving my coach's words and like not letting him down and just go week by week and just keep proving it every week.
That was actually a Gunnar, your quarterback, Gunnar Guardiola, that said that. He's the one that said that in the paper, that you were the best running back, and that's got to mean something for you too. That your quarterback has your back. He's going to be very key against. And I said this to Coach Lopez this morning. Gunnar Guardiola for Cleveland. For Las Cruces, you've got a good receiver. For Cleveland, there's Jordan Hatch, Evan Nanez, who you grew up with. You played a little basketball with him. Jacob Maldonado, playmakers, best on best, right? So it's a lot of hype, and that leads me to the next question. There is a lot of hype. It's number 1 versus number 2. Cleveland is the number 1 in the state, number 1 team in the state, the defending 6A state champions. You guys played the Storm to a two-score game last season, 35-25 loss at the Field of Dreams. Now you've had a year to dissect that. You're 3-0, they're 3-0. What are the keys for you guys to come out of this game with a win?
Yes, sir. We definitely left a lot on the table last year. Those 10 points kill us every year, and I know we talk about it, and we definitely had a lot more in the tank last year. We definitely had a lot more to give, and we match up well against these guys. We have playmakers on our side. Our defense is locked down, and they give us the chance to go and make plays. And that third phase of the game is special teams, and that's gonna come in huge this next week against Cleveland. So we definitely match up well, and it's gonna be a fun night.
You know what? I think one thing you're right about, Daniel, is the special teams. People forget that the punting game, the kicking game, the return game, those are really important. Hanging on to the football, not turning it over. Who's going to force a turnover? Who's going to make the plays? There was a play against Rio Rancho that they said was illegal procedure. You probably remember that play. Coach Pino didn't think it was. It turned the game. The tide turned, and those things happen. A bounce here, a call there, and you've got it. Like you mentioned, you've got to be able to go on to the next play. Looking back on last year's game, what was it about that game you learned from that you can carry over into this game?
I mean, definitely running the ball downhill. I mean, every time you run the ball downhill, it's going to be hard to stop, and especially with the O line that I have, it's going to be hard to stop because they move downhill, I move downhill, so it's pretty hard to stop. And I mean, with the quarterback we have, Gunner is mastermind. He picks apart defenses, and that's what we need from him. Our receivers do a great job of blocking, not only catching the ball, but they block for me very well every time I get to the second level. It's um, you see Cisco making a block downfield that helps me spring the touchdown, and I mean, having that is big because you never know what happens in that final block, and if he doesn't get it, then I don't spring it. So it's a whole team effort coming into this week. So we're excited and definitely looking forward to it.
I think one of the things that you said, I'm going to turn this over to my son after this, the running game. Everything is predicated on, you don't want to be in second and, you don't want to be behind the chains. You don't want it to be 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 10. You want it to be 2nd and 4, manageable 2nd down. You have to win on 1st down. And against Cleveland's physical front, that's the challenge, winning on 1st down. So that's I think a key going into Friday's game. Son, go ahead.
We're speaking with first-team All-State running back from Las Cruces, Dnaiel Amaro. Danny, wanted to look at some of your stats from your junior season. 1,743 rushing yards, 27 total touchdowns. 6 times you rushed for over 100 yards. And statistically, your best games were against Rio Rancho and Hobbs. 221 rushing yards versus Rio Rancho, 238 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns versus Hobbs. Las Cruces finished 9-4 last season. You guys got to the semifinals, lost to La Cueva. How did you feel at the end of that year? How did you feel your junior season turned out?
I was definitely excited for this next year. This off season was a big part of our success this year. We took a really big step back and just kind of looked at what kind of team are we? Like, our seniors this year are great leaders, and we take that with great pride. We like to think that nobody can stop us except ourselves. So coming into this week is going to be big. And I mean, this off season was big for us. We learned as a team, we grew as a team, and working from last year, it was a good season, but we're done coming up in the semis. We're done losing to La Cueva in the semis, so it's just a bad feeling, knowing that we could possibly be in the state championship the next game, but we come up short. So that feeling is just it's an icky feeling, and we don't want to feel that this year.
For sure, man. And I think part of the reason you feel that way is because of the pride and tradition that Las Cruces football has. Guys, I think I was looking on the NMAA record books last night. Las Cruces has played in 12 state championships. They won 8. Last time the Bulldogs hoisted the blue trophy was back-to-back in 2012 and 2013. But if you kind of look since you've been a freshman at Las Cruces, I think it was your freshman year in 2022, Las Cruces had a down season, 2-7, 1-4 in district. You guys missed out on the playoffs. Sophomore year, your sophomore year, Las Cruces goes 7-6, makes a run in the playoffs. You beat Los Lunas in the opening round, beat Centennial in the quarterfinals as a 7 seed. Then you lose to La Cueva in semifinals. And then last year, you kind of talked about the run that you guys had, falling short just a little bit in the semifinals to La Cueva again. But with the success that Las Cruces football has had the last 2 seasons and the early success that you've had this year being 3-0, do you feel like this program is back to where it needs to be?
Definitely. I mean, the team feeling is great. Usually don't we have a lot of juniors that step up, and it doesn't feel like they're juniors. It feels like we're all just a group. Like, there's no individual groups. We all have a bond within each other, and that's big on us because um, we tell ourselves that we're with and for each other. So I mean, we stay true to that, and we definitely think that we can make a run with this team, and we definitely think that Las Cruces High School football is back.
Yeah, man. And last question, then I'll turn it over to my dad. But, being down south, there's always kind of that stigma and that stereotype that teams from the south sometimes play with a chip on their shoulder because a lot of the teams up north, like Cleveland and La Cueva, they get all the attention. Most of the time, those are the top two teams in the NMOT coaches poll. And it seems like there's some of that northern bias a little bit. Do you feel that, as a player for Las Cruces playing in the south? And does that make you guys play with the chip on your shoulder a little bit?
Definitely, we try not to think about what kind of hype up north gets. We definitely play with that chip on our shoulder that we have to go improve ourselves every game day, and just kind of having that chip on our shoulder leads us to having that gritty team that we always have. I mean, we're always gonna fight. We're always gonna be in the fight, and this team is more than capable of doing it.
Sure, Dad.
Daniel, Coach Lopez mentioned that he coached under Jim Miller, the former Las Cruces, legend there. And Coach Lopez talked about what Coach Miller meant to him as a mentor and what he learned from him. And he said that to me too. And you were way too young; you weren't born yet when the legendary Jim Bradley coached at Mayfield. And he would always say that he'd win championships down at Mayfield, and he would say he would tell in the papers, he would say, we're just teaching the North how it's done. He had a big chip, man. And when he won championships and he won a few, he'd let them know. And so I think Coach Lopez, who grew up there in Las Cruces, taught elementary school in Las Cruces, has coached at Las Cruces, won a championship with his brother there as the quarterback. He says he was the quarterback's coach when his brother played. And so he's homegrown there. So he mentioned that. He mentioned having that kind of that chip. And, there is a bias that the Southern schools don't get as much attention. So here's another chance to showcase, right, on Friday. But not all the chips, it's not over with. There's still a lot of football to be played. And Coach Lopez made sure he mentioned that to me. You've recently announced an offer from Eastern New Mexico University. I'm the voice at Western New Mexico. So we have to face off against Eastern once a year. And, they run that option down there. They run the heck out of the ball there, man. And Kelly Lee, he does a great job with that. Could that be an offense where there's more recruitment, but is that an offense you feel you could thrive in?
Definitely, I feel like watching their offense is a big running offense, and that's always big for a running back. That's always big in the recruiting, but definitely just keeping my options open right now. So just kind of going with the season and letting the chips fall where they need to.
It's funny about Eastern. They'll run, and then play fake, hit that pass down the seam. When the safeties fall asleep because they're coming up to support the run. So Coach Lee, he's run that. He has that offense down to a T. You also posted some recruitment for local D1 schools like New Mexico State, UNM, and UTEP. What factors are important to you in picking a school to play football after high school? Being close to home, exposure, fit, scheme, all those things I would think factor in, but you definitely want to go to a place, I would think, where your skills are going to be showcased.
Definitely scheme. I mean, definitely getting that connection with the coaches is really big for me. I want to go somewhere where I know that I have someone to trust and not get turned around right when I step in the door. So definitely having that kind of relationship with all the coaches and just kind of looking at scheme, looking at what I could do for them, and just having that like connection with the coaches. Definitely.
You've got that now. You've got the special connection, I think, with Coach Lopez. I think a lot of him. It's my first time meeting him today, and we just bonded, man. We had a great interview because he had mentioned some stories about New Mexico State and Coach Lou Henson, who you wouldn't remember. But yeah, I think he runs a great program. I think he has your goals and objectives clearly defined. He loves Las Cruces. That's where he's from. So I think there's a lot of different things you'll be looking at when you do pick a school. Evan Nanas and you, I think, grew up a little bit together. Can you tell us a little bit of background about the Cleveland wide receiver, also heck of a basketball player too? Can you tell us a little bit about the background with Evan?
Yes, sir. We grew up together. We went to elementary school for about a year. We played on the same baseball team. We just kind of hung around each other and just kind of played ball together and grew up as kids and really haven't talked since, but definitely no bad blood.
Yeah, you'll be seeing a lot of him on Friday night. I was telling Coach Lopez that, right? It's number one versus number two, your best versus their best, all the hype, and I think it's a great thing for high school football fans. Number one versus number two in the state, on 6A at the 6A level, the defending champions. You want to come in, as you mentioned, have a good showing. Look at the scores that you've beaten teams by. The 61-6 win over Mayfield, I think, was the largest margin of victory in that storied rivalry for years. That game was always a head knocker. So I think going into the game, you've got momentum. The Storm has momentum. Both teams are playing very well. It should be a very good game on Friday night at Lightning Bolt Stadium. Son, do you have anything further for Daniel?
Yeah, I think just one or two more questions. Once again, we're speaking with first-team All-State running back for the Las Cruces Bulldogs, Danny Amaro. Danny, looking at your X account, you've kind of posted that'd be at Amaro Daniel 22 on X, but you posted this summer some of the camps that you went to. You went to an ASU camp, Texas Tech camp, U of A camp, Eastern Washington camp. Those are, I imagine that a lot of players of your caliber, kind of the same thing, are all out there. So how do you feel like your talent showcased against some of those guys at those camps this summer?
I feel like I showed out pretty well. Definitely got my name out there, and going to those big camps really furthered my knowledge in what I need to work on this season, what I need to have to go play at that next level. And talking to those coaches was big because they definitely didn't just want a player that could play. They want a all around player, and that's really what I'm thriving to be this year.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's one game at a time. You guys are 3-0 with probably the biggest game of the season on Friday at Lightning Bolt Stadium at Cleveland. I think, in talking to you, I can kind of guess what the goal is for this season. It's probably get to the state championship and win it. But aside from that, can you tell us any goals you have team-wise or individually for yourself for your final football season as a senior?
I mean, team-wise, it's going to be just kind of just having each other's back. We definitely have the team to do it, and we feel that. And going week by week, every week is just coming in every Monday and just realizing that it's about the process. And going into this next week is going to be big, staying in the process. If we get out of our process, we're just anybody. Anybody can beat us. But having that mentality of no one can stop us but us, and just definitely looking forward to this season. And then individual wise, just kind of helping the team in any way I can. This team deserves it all, and I'm willing to do it all for them.
For sure, man. No, those are good goals. And what I like that you said was you don't put like a number of wins that you want, a number of rushing yards you want to get, a number of rushing touchdowns. It's all about the team. And it's been reflective in your answers here tonight, man. So, Dad, you got anything else for Danny?
Daniel, you know what? I really appreciate you joining us. You know what? You do your talking on the field, man. You're kind of a low-key guy. Get it? I told Coach Lopez this morning, when you see number one versus number two, I got goosebumps, man, because you're like, hey, these are the best two teams high school-wise in New Mexico. Bad again, it's not the end of the year. Not the end of the year. There's a lot more football to be played. But both teams are undefeated. Both teams are playing well. And it's going to be a physical battle in those trenches. That's where the game's won. You know that. That's where they're won. Who's going to win on the in the offensive and defensive lines? And both teams have formidable. You said, hey, my offensive line you feel is the best. Jordan Hatch probably feels his is the best. So it's best on best, man. best on best. If you can't get excited for that, so we really appreciate you joining us. And we wish you all the best of luck Friday night. Again, you got Hobbs after that. So it's not like you just say, okay, there's no game that you can rest, man, at all. So you got a lot more challenges coming down the season. But, number one versus number two, I think is going to be a great matchup. And thanks so much for joining us. And we wish you the best of luck the rest of the year.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having me.
Once again, our guest was first-team All-State running back for the Las Cruces Bulldogs, Dnaiel Amaro. We'll take a quick break and be right back on Huddle Up.
The bell is ringing for the back-to-school bash at Capitol Ford in Santa Fe. Don't be late to add up big factory incentives combined with final dealer subtractions on current inventory. Get back-to-school savings in a new 25 Ford F-150 STX. Buy for $699 a month plus 4.9% APR financing for 72 months. Or a new 25 Ford Bronco Sport. Lease for just $399 a month. It all adds up to a great time to buy during the back-to-school bash at Capitol Ford in Santa Fe.
Welcome back to Huddle Up. We just had a 30-minute conversation with first-team All-State running back for the Las Cruces Bulldogs, Dnaiel Amaro. I'm Nick Nunez. Your other co-host is the voice of Western New Mexico Athletics, Ed Nunez. Dad, what did you think of Danny?
You know what? He's a look, and I think you and I talk about this all the time about kids and interviews. And, Jacob Baldonado, when we had him on at Cleveland, that kid, man, boom, 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 right? Braden Reynolds from La Cueva on deep in the dugout. Jahari Moorhead a little bit more reserved, Caden Reese reserved, and Dnaiel Amaro very reserved. But you know what? He does his work on the field. He was good. He's excited, but he's I think me, son. I'm your dad. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. I'm like, I can't wait. I'm ready, and he's just preparing, and he's calm. He's cool. He's collected. He's thinking about what his job is going to be on Friday. I really enjoyed him. I thought he talked about his offensive line, Gunnar Guardiola, the quarterback, his Coach Mark Lopez. He didn't say anything about Cleveland. He just mentioned what their job is. He didn't say anything about the Storm, that we're gunning for them. He didn't say any bulletin board material. Just waiting to do his job. And again, he's a low key guy, but you don't get those kind of stats without being one of the best players in the state.
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing for me is he's a team first guy, man. I mean, the first thing he says in James Yodis's article, it's time for number one versus number two, that was published last week in the Albuquerque Journal. The first thing he does is he gives credit to his offensive line. He doesn't brag. He's a very humble kid. And another thing that he said here tonight was, I'll do whatever it takes for my team because they deserve it. This team deserves it. So, man, to have the talent that he has and the humble personality that he has, just a fantastic player that Coach Mark Lopez and Las Cruces Bulldogs have. And what a matchup, man. I think a lot of people had circled this game when the season started. We're here now. Lightning Bolt Stadium, 7 p.m. in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. It's going to be a great atmosphere. I might try to get out there on Friday. Dad, let's look at some scores from last week across the state in New Mexico high school football. We'll take a look at 6A first. Oregon Mountain defeated Mayfield 35-28. Carlsbad over Lovington 31-28. Hobbs defeated Roswell 37-27. Alamogordo 31, Albuquerque High 20. Let's stop there, Dad. Alamogordo Tigers 3-0 on the season. They look really good.
I talked to head coach AJ Cisco. He's going to be my guest on the Sports Desk next week, and we talked about it. Back in the day, son, you weren't born, but Alamogordo, when I went to Highland, was a powerhouse. They got a lot of kids from the base over there. Now, Coach Cisco told me the mission on the base has changed over there, so they don't get the amount of kids. But he's got them playing very well. And the big win against Albuquerque High, he mentioned the running back for Albuquerque High, Alberto Landeros, who is one tough kid. He'll run for 10. You'll hit him. He'll pop up, and they beat him 31-20, and Alamogordo 3-0. And they've got a very tough competition this week, a game against Piedra Vista. So, watch out for the Tigers. Back in the day, son, they were a power, man. They were. So it's good to see them back on top a little bit.
Yeah, I think Alamogordo quarterback Nathaniel Best, I believe 3 touchdown passes against Albuquerque. Alamogordo beat Roswell last week at home. So I think the Tigers are for real. Centennial 42, Artesia 38, another shootout down south at the Bulldog Bowl. And it seems like Artesia, man, they play a really good strength of schedule too. They're in Class 5A. They beat Hobbs, I think, last week. That was another shootout where it was just really back and forth. But Class 5A, you got Goddard 49, Valley 14, Highlands 26, Taos 20. I'll let you give the Hornets some love, Dad.
They went on the road and they won. Taos was 0-2 and Highland was 1-1. And you know what? Highland could be 3-0. Although that game against Manzano, they turned it over 4 times, and they could have lost that game too. But they came through with a 4th and 7 in the opening game against Manzano. I thought we were going to overtime. They scored with 12 seconds left, and so against Bernalillo, that's a tough game. They lose 14-8, so they go on the road and they beat Taos 26-20. And I got to say this again, and I said this on a previous show. I'm a Highland guy, and Coach Gentry, of course, is a legend. Coach Judge Chavez coached there 17 years, did a great job. Coach Gary Sanchez was there, a very good friend of mine, and he did a great job coaching football there. They've had some other coaches. But I'm going to say this, though, that you remember, and I've told you this, that back in the day, Highland got numbers like you wouldn't believe. They got a lot of numbers from the base, Fort Hills, Altura. They got a lot of different kids, and especially the base back then, man. Being Coach Gary Sanchez, the track coach, benefited from that too. So those don't come to Highland anymore. They don't. So I got to say this with Coach Lovato and the personnel he's had. I think he's done a fabulous job. And Nick, I told you, he changes formations. He'll go double tight end. He'll go power I. He'll go unbalanced. And so he uses a lot of different things to keep the defense. He's got Anchando, a running back, who's not a runner between the tackles. He'll run outside. He's got speed. Casper Groves, another running back, Jose Tapia. I think their defense is probably a little better than we thought. So Highland, I give them a lot of credit because of the numbers they don't have anymore. I think Coach Lovato has done a fabulous job there. He really has. After COVID, they lost a lot of numbers. They've rebuilt the program a little bit. And just, as somebody that's watched Highland for a long time, I think Coach Lovato has done a good job there.
Couple more scores in 5A, and then we'll jump back to 6A because there's 2 more games that I wanted to talk about. In Class 5A, Belen over Valencia, 28-27 in the Battle of Valencia County. Manzano, 22, Del Norte, 0. And then Gadsden in Class 5A defeats Clint, Texas, 36-21. But back to Class 6A, the My 50 game of the week on Friday night at Wilson Stadium was Cibola it was at Community Stadium. It was Cibola taking on El Dorado. The Cougars knocked the Eagles off 35-14. We've had a couple of those kids on Huddle Up. We had Hayes Baum on earlier in the summer. And then last week we had Jahari Moorhead on. Didn't get the chance to see Moorhead stats, Dad. I know on the ProView or in the Everguard Roofing and Solar Top 10 Plays of the Week put on by ProView Networks, Jahari Moorhead had, I think, like a 90-plus yard punt return. He didn't punch it into the end zone, but he got down to the 2. It was called back for an illegal block in the back. But the Cibola Cougars could very easily be 3-0. They're 2-1 on the season. They lost in the opening week to Albuquerque High. Albuquerque High orchestrates a touchdown drive late in the final minute and ends up winning that game. But the Cougars look really good under head coach David House.
I think when we had Jahari Moorhead on, son, I did say this, that I told Jahari that there's no way Coach House is going to single cover you. No way. There's no way. Jahari feasted on single coverage against Oregon Mountain to the tune of, 296 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, Coach House, remember, 2 undefeated state championship teams at Rio Rancho in 2014 and 2016. Then he went to coach at UNM. So Coach House, somebody mentioned, they said they haven't seen Cibola look this good in a long time. Now, Coach Rod Williams had some good teams out there, some very good teams. Coach House has done a very good job there. They're a team to keep an eye on, 3-1 so far. And I think his coaching has made a lot of difference so far in this season. I'm not too surprised, though, that they beat El Dorado, maybe by the margin, but I think you got to really keep an eye on the Cougars.
Yeah, and Hayes Baum, again, who we had on Huddle Up, he plays both ways. He's the quarterback under center at times for Cibola, also plays linebacker for the Cougars, but he's really a threat in the red zone. I think he had a nice quote in the Albuquerque Journal. He just feels like, he puts in the work. He knows he's outworked everybody, and he feels like he's unstoppable when he gets the ball in the red zone. I think he scored 3 rushing touchdowns from like 8, 2, and 7 yards out in a really close in goal line situations. And he's a big kid. He's 6 feet, right around 215 pounds, taking the ball as a direct snap. Just another weapon for Coach House. So, like the Cougars, they play in a tough district. They play in Cleveland's district in District 1. And the other team I wanted to talk about, because I had that game on Saturday, it was Volcano Vista defeating Sandia 51-13. And I got to tell you, Dad, that Volcano Vista team, they're very balanced, really in all phases of the game. They've got a stable of running backs led by junior tailback D'Angelo Mitchell. He scored 2 rushing touchdowns on Saturday. Jude Gonzalez, number 23, is another weapon for them in the backfield. He scored 1 from 3 yards out. And, the Hawks lost their starting quarterback in week 1 when they defeated La Cueva 21-0. Spirit Penn Cook, who had over 100 yards passing and over 100 yards rushing, went down in that game. And so they're down to their second string guy, junior number 4, Aurelius Wiley. And, man, he runs that offense really well. He threw for 2 touchdown passes. I think he was over 100 yards passing. Didn't have a rushing touchdown, but he's a threat. He's a dual threat quarterback, and he runs that RPO read option really, really well. Sometimes you can't tell. Is he handing it off to Mitchell? Is he taking it himself? They just got a lot of weapons in the backfield, and their defense just stymied Sandia. Sandia's got a lot of playmakers, George Smith, Gad Harris. George Smith had a nice 58-yard touchdown reception. Gad Harris had a 12-yard touchdown run. But I was really impressed with the way the Volcano Vista defense contained those 2 playmakers for the most part on Saturday, and the score showed it 51-13. A couple more scores in 3A or in 4A, in Class 2A, and then we'll wrap this up, Dad. Bernalillo over Portales, 19-13 in overtime. Spartans are 3-0 on the season, Dad, and we had John Cobos on Huddle Up a couple weeks ago. Every single game they've had has been close. They were down in the second half to Valley in week 1, and they found a way to pull it out. Then against Highland, I think the score was 2-0 for most of the game. They were down 8-2 late in the fourth quarter, ended up pulling that one out, and then they get another one out in overtime. This is just a team that knows how to win close football games.
One of the things that Coach Cobos mentioned, and you mentioned the changes at quarterback, and they thrive on their defense turning it over, getting turnovers, and making plays, and they've done that. And they had to go on the road to beat Portales, and Portales was just you did the state championship with me a couple years ago up in Portales, where Lovington beat them. So that's a good program. They've beaten good programs. Highland and Bernalillo had a really close matchup that Bernalillo came out on top of. So I think you got to give Coach Cobos a lot of credit for their start, and watch out for the Spartans, man. Watch out for them. You remember what we said where the program was when he took over? Nobody thought about Bernalillo football, son. I know that because they thought about Bernalillo basketball. Now people are paying attention to Bernalillo football, and he's done a great job there and winning close games, son. What does that tell you? Defense, coaching, belief they're going to get it done. So if you're playing Bernalillo, you better step on their neck, man, and if you have them down, because they'll come back on you, make a play, make key plays, bounces, defense. Defense wins games, and they've done a good job of that so far.
Thank you for joining us here tonight on Huddle Up. We're just about to wrap this up. I did see one of our commenters, John Romero. I will read off the St. Mike's Santa Fe score. Before we get there, though, St. Pius and Moriarty. Now, it's a game where Moriarty was up 14-0 in the first quarter, and the game was called for a lightning delay. I think the rule on that is that, according to the NMAA handbook, perhaps it's something else somewhere else, but if the game's not more than halfway over, then it's just a draw. Nobody wins. If they get to halftime, I think if someone's winning at halftime, they'll get the win. I could be wrong on that, but either way, kind of a little bit of a punch in the mouth for St. Pius, who came out really strong against West Mesa in week 1. And they've just looked really good. They looked good against Grants in week 2. It was a close game at halftime, but the Sartans pulled away in the second half. But for Moriarty to be up 14-0, perhaps a wake-up call for St. Pius. They'll be taking on Oregon Mountain this Friday or Saturday. I'll see if I can get that for you before we close out here. But another Class 4A score, Hope Christian over Albuquerque Academy, 24-21. Silver over Deming, 41-14. And then to our commenter, John Romero, yes, the St. Mike's Horsemen, 3-0 on the season. They defeated Santa Fe High 28-0 in the Battle for Santa Fe. And the Demons are better this year. You know, both teams coming into this game, St. Mike's and Santa Fe High, were 2-0 on the season. Santa Fe got a real tough win at Belen in week 2, 39-26. So another, strong win for the Horsemen. They've always been there in Class 3A, one of the best programs in the state. The Horsemen looking good again, Dad.
Joey Fernandez does a great job out there. Had him on the sports desk probably about 3 years ago, and they won the state championship last year, right? They beat Dexter, I think. So yeah, they run a great program. John Romero is a very proud St. Mike's Horseman, and yes, we have you're a former Sarton, and you have nothing against St. Mike's at all. You guys had some tough battles when you played basketball for St. Pius against St. Mike's. Always ran a great program on the basketball side, but St. Mike's football, like we mentioned, Coach Fernandez has done a fabulous job out there. So yeah, their defense is their defense is very stout. But when you mentioned Santa Fe, it's good to see Santa Fe coming back a little bit. Before Capital was built, the Demons dominated. They did. They really did, man. They had some great years. And then when Capital was built, they took away a lot of students from Santa Fe. And then Santa Fe went through some downtimes in football. So it's good to see them being competitive again. I like that.
2 more scores in Class 2A. The Santa Rosa Lions defeated Class 3A Robertson 8-0. Lions are 3-0 on the season. We talked about them beating Texaco in week 1. And it just looks like Santa Rosa's for real, Dad. I think they had a chip on their shoulder, bad taste in their mouth from last year.
You know what? They run that spinning back, man, which, not many teams run that. I thought Moriarty used to run that. They do. I don't know if they still do. But, they got – you did the championship game last year with, Texaco mauled them. They did. You mentioned the offensive line of Texaco. And so I think, they're off to a great start, and they beat Texaco in the beginning, the opening game of the year. That's a statement. And they're the way they're playing now. I think, they're on top of their game right now, son. And that's a tough offense to defend. It really is. You don't know who has the ball. You mentioned that when you did the game, that it was tough to follow the football. But they've been, how long they've been running that? There's Nick. They've been running that system there over 20-some years, maybe longer, under the great Frank Ortiz. He's the one that started Frank Ortiz Field. He's still alive. But I think they ran that as far back as when Coach Ortiz was there at Santa Rosa.
If you're interested in watching New Mexico high school football, at least in the metro area, get on to ProViewNetworks.com. Looking at their website now, looks like there's 8 games coming your way in New Mexico high school football. On Thursday, Carlsbad Cavemen will be taking on the Cibola Cougars, I believe, at Newsenda Community Stadium, 7 p.m. That game will be on GameVision.io and Comcast Channel 26. If you're interested in getting a subscription to GameVision, type in GameVision.io in any browser. You can get a single game subscription, I think it's about maybe $19.99. You can get a season pass for 3 months. That's $39.99. Or you can get a full year pass. That's $69.99. On Thursday, also, Oregon Mountain will be taking on the St. Pius Sartans. That game's going to be on Game Vision. 4 games for you on Friday. Centennial Hawks will be taking on the Rio Rancho Rams. That'll be the My 50 game of the week. Another big game. Dad, everyone's talking about Cleveland taking on Las Cruces, but Rio Rancho and Centennial are 2 top 10 teams in Class 6A. And the Hawks, gave Cleveland a little bit of a run. I know it was pretty lopsided for the most part in week 1. I think Centennial really closed the gap kind of in garbage time in the fourth quarter. But they put up 42 points on the Storm, and they're certainly not somebody we can forget about.
No, I think that's, you mentioned the hype around Cleveland and Las Cruces, rightfully so. But that's going to be a very good game. Centennial and Rio Rancho licking their wounds after losing 47-22 to Las Cruces last week. So that's going to be a good game.
Los Alamos taking on Highland on Friday. Catch that game on Game Vision at 7 p.m. Sandia taking on La Cueva at 7 p.m., I believe, at Wilson Stadium. That game will be on Game Vision. And then West Mesa taking on Volcano Vista on Friday, 7 p.m. on Game Vision. 2 Saturday games. Hope Christian will be taking on Monzano at 11 a.m., and then My Amaro will be taking on Rio Grande at 11 a.m. Also catch that game on Game Vision. Dad, anything else before we wrap this up?
You know what, son? No, just another great, we just want a couple mentions. Ryan Tamari will wrap up UNM. They beat Idaho State. We'll wrap that up tomorrow afternoon. And, wanted to mention that. Went to the press conference today, and Coach Eck was mentioning they're playing UCLA Friday in the Rose Bowl. So congratulations to the Lobos. And one more, mention, son, Jeffrey Jones, the New Mexico Highlands running back, was run for 624 yards so far this season in 2 games, was averaging 16.3 yards carry on Saturday against Western, the team that I cover. The game was in Las Vegas. What a shootout. They led 35-7. Western stormed back, and the game was tied 55-all, and Highlands scores the last 2 touchdowns to win 69-55 in a football game. The Batala Bowl, they win. They get the trophy. But Jeffrey Jones is a guest. They have an open week this week, and maybe you and I can get him on Huddle Up and cover him because his stats so far through 2 games are amazing.
Our guest tonight on Huddle Up was first-team All-State running back for the Las Cruces Bulldogs, Dnaiel Amaro. For my co-host, the voice of Western New Mexico Athletics, Ed Nunez, our producer, Ryan Tamari, I'm Nick Nunez. Thank you for joining us on Huddle Up. We'll see you next time.